The snow was falling gently outside the window as Margaret Reynolds sat at her kitchen table, a cup of chamomile tea growing cold beside her. Her weathered hands traced the outlines of brochures scattered across the wooden surface. Yellowstone National Park, with its majestic geysers, the Grand Canyon's breathtaking vistas, the Pacific Coast Highway's winding oceanside roads. Places she had dreamed of seeing for over 40 years, dreams that had always taken a back seat to responsibility. At 67, Margaret had finally retired after 35 years of teaching at Riverside Elementary in Columbus, Ohio. 35 years of shaping young minds, of parent-teacher conferences, of Christmas pageants and science fairs. 35 years of putting everyone else first. Now, finally, it was her time. The kitchen clock ticked steadily, marking the rhythm of this new chapter in her life, her second day of retirement. The house felt different somehow. Quieter, more spacious, full of possibilities. Margaret allowed herself a small smile as she picked up a pen and began circling potential destinations on the brochure for a New England autumn tour. The shrill ring of the telephone cut through the peaceful silence. Margaret's hand froze mid-circle, her eyes drifting to the caller ID. Amanda. Her smile faded. She stared at the ringing phone, contemplating letting it go to voicemail. But old habits die hard, and Margaret had never been one to avoid responsibility. She picked up the receiver with a slight tremor in her hand. Before she could even say hello, Amanda's voice pierced through sharp and demanding. "Margaret," she began without preamble, without even a hello. Amanda never called her mother-in-law, much less mom. "I have an incredible opportunity in Miami. It's a multi-level marketing conference that's going to change our lives." Margaret closed her eyes briefly. Another one of Amanda's pyramid schemes that inevitably lost money. "The kids can't miss 2 weeks of school," Amanda continued, her voice taking on that practiced enthusiasm Margaret had come to recognize as manipulation. "So I'll leave them with you. I'm sorry." "Pardon me?" Margaret's voice came out as a whisper, her mind struggling to process Amanda's presumption. "Oh, don't play deaf." Amanda snapped her true colors showing through the thin veneer of politeness. "I said I'm going to leave Jason, Emma, and Jacob with you. After all, you don't do anything anymore. You can watch them while I travel. It's perfect. Now that you're not working, you have all the time in the world." Don't do anything anymore. The words sliced through Margaret like a surgeon's scalpel, precise and painful. This woman, who had never worked an honest day in her life, who lived off Margaret's son David like a parasite, was telling her that she did nothing. "Amanda, I have plans," Margaret said, fighting to keep her voice level. "Plans?" Amanda laughed, that sharp laugh that made Margaret's skin crawl. What plans could a retired old woman have knitting watching soap operas? "Please, Margaret, don't be ridiculous. I'll drop them off tomorrow at 7 in the morning. And don't give them junk food like last time." The last time Margaret had seen her grandchildren was 6 months ago at Christmas, and only for 2 hours. Amanda had insisted they needed to visit her parents, the important ones, the ones with money. "I'm not going to watch them for you, Amanda." There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if Amanda couldn't comprehend being refused. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. "What do you mean you're not? You're their grandmother. It's your obligation. Besides, David agrees." Margaret's heart sank. Her son didn't even know about this arrangement. She was certain of it. David worked 14-hour days at the manufacturing plant to support Amanda's endless whims and extravagances. "If you ever want to see your grandchildren again, you'd better cooperate," Amanda threatened, her voice cold as ice, "because I decide if they have a grandmother or not." In that moment, something inside Margaret broke, or rather something awakened. A strength she had forgotten she possessed, a fire that had been smoldering beneath decades of compromise and sacrifice. "All right, Amanda," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Bring them over tomorrow." "That's more like it," Amanda replied, triumph coloring her words. "And don't spoil them. You know they're difficult children, but that's because you never knew how to raise David properly. If he had had a decent mother." Margaret ended the call before Amanda could finish, her hand shaking, not from fear, but from a long dormant anger rising to the surface. She sat back in her kitchen chair, looking at the framed retirement certificate on the wall. 35 years shaping generations. And her own daughter-in-law treated her like a free servant. But if Margaret had learned anything in all those years of teaching, it was that the best lessons weren't taught with words. They were taught through experience, through consequences. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. "Carol, yes, it's Margaret. I need your help." Do you remember what you told me about the hidden recorders you used in your divorce? She listened, nodding. Perfect. And one more thing. Is your sister still working at Child Protective Services? As she hung up, Margaret poured herself another cup of chamomile tea. This time, she added a splash of brandy from the dusty bottle in the back of her cabinet. Tomorrow, the real education would begin, but it wouldn't be for the children. Amanda was about to learn the most important lesson of her life. Never underestimate a retired teacher with free time and a desire for justice. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. As she tossed and turned, memories from the past 35 years crashed over her like waves against the shore. How had she allowed her family to treat her like an outdated piece of furniture, useful only when needed? It had all started when David was just 3 years old. Her husband Richard had left one rainy October morning, headed out for a business trip. His car became part of a 50-vehicle pileup in a blizzard on I-80. 23 people died instantly. Richard was passenger 24, surviving for 3 agonizing days in the hospital, while Margaret spent their 5-year savings trying to save him. "Take care of our son," he had whispered his last words before slipping away. "Make him a good man." And she had tried. God, how she had tried. Margaret was left with $100 in their bank account, a 3-year-old boy, and a teaching degree from the state university. The first few years were a hell she wouldn't wish on anyone. Double shifts morning at the elementary school, afternoons tutoring. David ate before she did. If there was money for one pair of shoes, they were for him. If there was enough left for a toy on his birthday, she pretended she wasn't hungry that night. Her mother, God rest her soul, would tell her, "Margaret, you're going to kill yourself working like this. Find another husband, someone who can provide for you both." But Margaret would look at David with those brown eyes just like his father's, and know that no stepfather would ever love him like she did. No strange man was going to give him the love only she could. So she kept going alone against all odds. The sacrifices were endless and largely invisible to David, who grew up believing his mother could accomplish anything. Margaret remembered one Christmas when David was 8. She had saved for 6 months to buy the bicycle he wanted so badly. On Christmas Eve, while he slept, she realized she had no money for Christmas dinner. She sold her grandmother's locket for $50 so she could make turkey with all the trimmings. David never knew. To him, his mother was invincible. His mother could do anything. When David reached high school, the expenses multiplied. Books, clothes, bus fare, supplies. Margaret maintained her double shifts, but now also sold pies at the church bake sale on Sundays. Her hands, once smooth and elegant, became wrinkled, stained with joints swollen from kneading dough at 4 in the morning. But it was worth it when David was accepted to Ohio State University for industrial engineering. Margaret was bursting with pride. Her son, the son of the widow Reynolds, the one who grew up without a father, was going to be an engineer. It was in his junior year that Amanda appeared. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special," he told her one Sunday after church. There she was in a pastel pink dress, her perfect smile, her shiny black hair falling in waves over her shoulders. She looked like a porcelain doll, too perfect to be real. She had embraced Margaret with a warmth that completely disarmed her. "Oh, Mrs. Reynolds, David has told me so much about you. I admire you so much. Raising such a wonderful son all by yourself. You're my hero." How could Margaret not fall into her trap? She who had spent 20 years without a sincere hug that wasn't from her son, suddenly had this pretty young woman calling her a hero. The flattery was intoxicating. The first few years were good. Margaret wouldn't lie about that. Amanda would come to the house, help her cook, tell her about her supposedly humble family from a small town in West Virginia. Her father, a coal miner, her mother, a waitress. "That's why I understand you so much, Mrs. Reynolds. You and I know what it's like to struggle." Lies. It was all lies. But Margaret was so happy to see David in love that she didn't want to see the warning signs flashing like neon all around them. They married when David graduated. Margaret paid for half the wedding with her retirement savings. "It's an investment in my son's happiness," she justified to herself. Amanda cried with emotion at the ceremony. Or so Margaret thought. Now she realized Amanda had been crying because she expected a more lavish wedding. The change was gradual, like poison administered in small doses. First came the subtle comments, "Oh, Margaret, what a shame David didn't have a father figure. You can see it in his lack of ambition." Or, "If you had saved, better David could have gone to a private university." And, "No offense, but your pies are very simple. I make them with more ingredients, more gourmet. Each comment was a small stab, but Margaret endured them. For David. Always for David. When Jason, her first grandson, was born, Margaret thought things would improve. She rushed to the hospital with the blanket she had knitted for 9 months. Amanda looked at it and set it aside. Thanks, but we already have everything from Nordstrom. We can donate it. Nordstrom. While Margaret still bought her clothes at Goodwill to save for her son's future, Amanda was shopping at Nordstrom with David's salary. Then came Emma and Jacob. With each grandchild, Margaret drifted further away. Amanda had 1,000 excuses. The children needed a routine. Margaret would spoil them. Her house wasn't safe for children. Her parenting ideas were outdated. You just don't understand, Margaret, she said once. Kids today need early stimulation. English classes, swimming, robotics, not just peanut butter and jelly sandwiches like David grew up on. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Her son grew up with love, with values, with the certainty that he was cherished. But Amanda had started her campaign to alienate Margaret. And David was too exhausted from working to notice or intervene. The hardest blow came 2 years ago at Emma's 5th birthday. Margaret had saved for 3 months to buy her the dollhouse she had seen at the mall. She arrived at their house with the wrapped gift and wearing her best dress, only to be stopped at the door. "Oh, Margaret, what a shame," Amanda said, blocking the entrance. "It's just a party for her friends from school and their parents. You understand they're different people. We wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. The birthday girl's grandmother would make the guests uncomfortable. Through the doorway, Margaret glimpsed David in the background playing with the children. He didn't look up. He knew she was there and did nothing. Margaret left with the dollhouse and cried all the way home. That night she donated it to the local orphanage. At least there it would be appreciated. And now, after all this, after years of humiliation and contempt, Amanda wanted Margaret to be her free babysitter. As if all the pain she'd caused could be erased when she needed something. But what Amanda didn't know was that Mrs. Reynolds had learned a lot more than math and English in 35 years of teaching. She had studied child psychology, observed dysfunctional families, witnessed hundreds of cases of narcissistic mothers using their children as weapons. And above all, she had learned to wait for the perfect moment to act. As dawn broke, Margaret looked at the clock, 5:00 a.m. In 2 hours, Amanda would knock on her door with 3 children who barely knew her. 3 children who had been conditioned to see her as the poor grandmother, the boring grandmother, the grandmother who wasn't worth their time. She rose, showered, and dressed with particular care, not in her usual comfortable clothes, but in a tailored navy pantsuit she had bought for her retirement ceremony. If she was going into battle, she would dress for victory. In the kitchen, Margaret prepared a breakfast unlike any she had made in years. French toast with fresh berries, crisp bacon, and orange juice freshly squeezed. The dining table was set perfectly with the good china she had been saving for a special occasion. This was war, but she would fight it with unexpected weapons, kindness, structure, and truth. At precisely 7:00 a.m., the doorbell rang. Not 7:05 or 6:55. Amanda was always punctual when it suited her purposes. Margaret opened the door to find Amanda standing there impatiently, 3 children with sour expressions beside her, dragging suitcases bigger than themselves. Amanda was dressed as if for a magazine photo shoot, not a mother dropping off her children for childcare. "I don't have time to chat," Amanda said, not even crossing the threshold. "Jason is allergic to dust. Emma won't eat anything with green vegetables. And Jacob needs his iPad to fall asleep. Their medications are in the blue suitcase. I'll be back in 2 weeks. "And David, isn't he coming to say goodbye to his children?" Margaret asked, noticing her son's absence. "David is working as always," Amanda replied with an edge of contempt. "Someone has to support this family." She looked Margaret up and down, her eyes lingering on the pantsuit with a flicker of surprise. "Not all of us are lucky enough to retire with a government pension." Margaret's pension, $1,500 a month after 35 years of service. Amanda spent more than that on her nails and eyelash extensions. The children entered, dragging their feet. Jason, 12 years old, with his phone glued to his face. Emma, 10, with a permanent look of disgust that no child that age should have mastered. And Jacob, 7, already looking for the television. "Be good for your grandmother," Amanda said without conviction. Then she leaned in close to Margaret and whispered, "And don't you dare fill their heads with ideas. Remember that I decide if they ever see you again." She left without saying goodbye to her children. Not a kiss, not a hug, just the sound of her heels clicking away and the engine of her brand new SUV. Margaret stood there with 3 children who looked at her as if she were the enemy. "Grandma, where's the Wi-Fi? I need the password." Jason's voice broke the silence, demanding rather than asking. "The modem is broken," Margaret lied. She had unplugged it on purpose. "What? No way, Mom! He started screaming as if being tortured. "Your mom is gone, Jason," Margaret said calmly, "and screaming isn't going to bring the internet back." "You're the worst grandmother in the world," the boy spat. "That's why nobody likes you." There it was, Amanda's poison coming out of her grandson's mouth. But it didn't hurt Margaret. She was prepared for this. "I'm hungry," Emma interrupted, her voice dripping with disdain. "But I'm not going to eat anything you cook. Mom says you're a terrible cook and that's why Dad is so skinny." "And I want to watch YouTube," Jacob added. "At home I watch YouTube all day." Margaret looked at the 3 of them. Perfect products of neglect disguised as modern parenting. Children who knew no boundaries, who didn't understand respect, who had been programmed to despise her. But then she remembered the exact moment Amanda had crossed the final line. It was last Christmas. Margaret had prepared her specialty, a holiday turkey with stuffing from her mother's recipe green bean casserole and cranberry sauce. She had cooked for 2 days straight. She arrived at their house with the pan still warm. The children ran to the kitchen, drawn by the delicious smell. "Don't touch that," Amanda had yelled. "We don't know under what conditions your grandmother prepared it. We'd better order pizza." Pizza on Christmas Eve. Margaret watched in silent horror as Amanda threw her food in the trash without even trying it. The children looked at Margaret with pity, as if she were a beggar who had brought leftovers. "Grandma's food is too greasy," Amanda explained to them. "And her kitchen has cockroaches." A lie. Margaret's kitchen was cleaner than an operating room. But David stood there watching it all happen, and he only said, "Amanda knows what's best for the kids." That night, Margaret decided that her son was lost, but her grandchildren might still have a chance. "Grandma, do something. We're bored." Jason threw a cushion on the floor in frustration. "You know what?" Margaret said, her voice calm but firm. "Your mother asked me to take care of you, not to entertain you. There's food in the kitchen, water in the tap, and beds to sleep in. If you need anything else, you'll have to earn it." "Earn it?" Emma looked offended. "We're kids. We don't have to earn anything." "In this house, everyone contributes," Margaret replied. "That's how I was raised. That's how I raised your father before your mother ruined him. And that's how these 2 weeks are going to work." "I'm going to tell my mom you're mean," Jacob threatened, his lower lip quivering. "Go ahead," Margaret said. "And while you're at it, tell her I found her Facebook page very interesting, especially the photos from Puerto Vallarta last month when she was supposedly at a training seminar." The children fell silent. They didn't understand what Margaret was talking about, but they sensed that their grandmother was not the same person anymore. That first night was hell. Jason kicked his bedroom door. Emma cried for hours, demanding her special food. Jacob wet the bed on purpose. They wanted to break Margaret just like their mother had tried to break her for years. But at 2:00 a.m., Margaret heard sobs from Emma's room. These weren't tantrums. They were real tears. She entered silently and found Emma hugging a crumpled photo. "What do you have there, my girl?" Emma startled and hid the photo under her pillow. "Nothing. Go away." But Margaret had seen enough. It was a picture of her with Emma when she was a baby. One of the few times Margaret was allowed to hold her before Amanda began her campaign of alienation. "Do you miss your mom?" Margaret asked gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. "No," Emma answered too quickly. "Mom always leaves. She's used to it. I'm used to it." There it was, the first crack in the armor. Amanda hadn't just abandoned Margaret. She had abandoned her own children, using money and gifts as a substitute for love. "Emma, how often does your mom go on trips?" "I don't know. Once a month, sometimes more. She always says it's for work, but—" The girl trailed off. "But nothing. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Mom says family problems stay in the family. Family problems stay in the family. The golden rule of abusers." Silence. Margaret got up and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back. "Emma, would you like to learn how to make those pecan cookies you used to love when you were little?" Emma's eyes lit up for a second before dimming again. "Mom says your kitchen is dirty." "Your mom says a lot of things," Margaret replied. "Why don't you find out for yourself tomorrow?" She closed the door, leaving Emma with her thoughts. The first seed had been planted. What Margaret didn't know then was that Jason's phone, the one he couldn't use without Wi-Fi, held messages that would reveal Amanda's darkest secret. Messages that would explain why she had really gone to Miami. And when Margaret discovered them, she understood that she wasn't just saving her grandchildren. She was saving her entire family from a woman who was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The second day dawned with an unexpected tranquility. At 6:00 a.m., before the children woke up, Carol arrived with a shoebox. "Here's everything you asked for," she whispered, handing Margaret the package. 3 recorders the size of a button, a camera that looks like a smoke detector, and this. She pulled out a manila envelope. "The credit reports you requested. Margaret, your daughter-in-law, has debts of $30,000, all in David's name." Margaret's heart sank for her son. He had no idea. "And your sister from Child Protective Services is coming tomorrow at 3 for a casual routine visit," Carol continued. "But Margaret, you need concrete evidence if you want to do something legal." Evidence. That was exactly what Margaret was going to get. When the children woke up, breakfast was on the table. Pancakes shaped like animals' fruit cut into stars, chocolate milk. Not the horrible food their mother had told them Margaret made. Jason was the first to come down still in his wrinkled pajamas. He stopped short when he saw the table. "What's this breakfast? Eat before it gets cold." He sat down suspiciously, took a bite, and for the first time Margaret saw something resembling a smile, but he immediately composed himself. "It's okay. I've had better." Emma and Jacob came down drawn by the smell. Jacob launched himself directly at the pancakes. "They're delicious, Grandma." "Shut up, stupid," Emma elbowed him. "We're not supposed to—" She trailed off. "You're not supposed to what, Emma?" Margaret asked gently. "Nothing," the girl mumbled, but she ate every bite on her plate. After breakfast, Margaret laid out her rules. "If you want Wi-Fi television or any privileges, you have to earn them. Jason, your job is to wash the dishes. Emma, make the beds. Jacob, pick up the toys." "That's child labor," Jason shouted. "No, my boy," Margaret replied calmly. "Child labor is what I see on your mother's Instagram." Look, she took out her phone and showed a screenshot of Amanda's Facebook page. "Here's your mom in Miami on the beach with a man who is not your father." The 3 children gathered to see. In the photo, Amanda was in a bikini embracing a man who was definitely not David. The hashtag read #newlife, #finally free. "That's Uncle James," Jacob said innocently. "Mom's friend who sometimes comes over when Dad is at work." Jason quickly covered his brother's mouth, but it was too late. The second piece of the puzzle had just fallen into place. "Uncle James?" Margaret asked casually. "How often does Uncle James come over?" "We're not supposed to talk about that," Jason said, panic in his eyes. "Mom said if we told anyone about Uncle James, Dad would get very sad and could die of sadness." The level of manipulation was worse than Margaret had imagined. "Kids, your dad isn't going to die of sadness. Adults don't work like that. But I need you to tell me the truth about everything. It's important." "Why?" Emma crossed her arms defensively. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I love you," Margaret said simply. "And when you love someone, you protect them. And right now, you need protection." It was Jacob who broke first, the youngest, the most innocent, the one who wasn't completely contaminated yet by Amanda's poison. "Grandma, why does Mom say you're mean if you make such yummy pancakes?" "I don't know, sweetheart. What else does your mom say about me?" "She says you're poor and embarrassing. That's why we can't visit you," Jacob replied. "She says your house smells bad and that you're a bitter old woman who ruined Dad's life." Every word was a stab, but Margaret kept her composure. She discreetly pressed the record button on the device Carol had brought. "And what do you think? Your house smells like cinnamon and coffee," Emma said in a low voice. "It smells like home." That afternoon, while the children were doing their assigned chores, protesting but doing them, Margaret checked Jason's phone. She had forgotten that kids these days saved everything to the cloud. With a little patience, she accessed his Google account. What she found chilled her blood. WhatsApp conversations between Amanda and this James. They weren't just lovers. They were planning something much worse. "I have almost everything ready," Amanda wrote. "David signed the papers without reading. As always, the house is already in my name." "And the brats," James replied. "I'll leave them with the old woman as soon as he gives me the divorce. Besides, David works so much he barely sees them. He won't be able to ask for custody, Amanda wrote. But we need more money to move to Miami for good. The old woman has a house. It's worth at least $200,000. When she dies, David inherits, and as his wife, half is mine. Margaret kept reading with growing horror. Amanda had taken out 3 credit cards in David's name. She had sold the car that was in his name and told him it had been stolen. She had even tried to take out a loan using Margaret's house as collateral, but needed her signature. That's why the monthly trips. They weren't for work. They were to meet James in different cities. All paid for with the money David was killing himself to earn. Margaret took pictures of everything, every message, every photo, every piece of evidence. Her friend Carol was right. She needed to document everything. That night during dinner, she decided to test the children. What would you like to do tomorrow? Go home, Jason answered automatically. To which home, your dad's house or Uncle James's house? Emma's fork clattered onto her plate. I don't know what you're talking about. Emma, sweetheart, I know it's hard, but I need you to tell me the truth. Does Uncle James live with you? No. Well, sometimes when Dad travels for work, he stays to take care of us, in the guest room. Jacob let out a nervous giggle. No, Grandma. He sleeps in Mom and Dad's room and he doesn't let us in, and they make weird noises. Jason stood up from the table, furious. Shut up, Jacob. Mom said not to say anything. And what else did your mom tell you not to say? Margaret asked gently. Emma broke first. The tears started falling like a waterfall. That Dad is boring, that Uncle James is more fun, that soon we're going to have a new house with a pool, that we're not going to be poor like Dad anymore, that we're not going to end up like you, Grandma, living in an old ugly house. Margaret hugged her. For the first time in years, her granddaughter allowed her to do so, and she cried. She cried like the 10-year-old girl she was, not like the little robot Amanda had tried to create. Grandma, Jason whispered, and for the first time there was no hostility in his voice. Does Dad know? No, my love, your dad doesn't know anything. Are you going to tell him? I'm going to do something better, Margaret promised. I'm going to make sure you are all okay, that your dad is okay, and that your mom, that your mom gets exactly what she deserves. That night, after putting the children to bed, and for the first time none of them protested, Margaret called David. Hi, Mom. How are the kids? Amanda told me you offered to watch them. Offered the liar had twisted everything. They're fine, son. Hey, could you come over tomorrow after work? There's something with the house I need to discuss with you. Is it urgent? Amanda asked me not to bother her on her work trip. It's about a leak in the roof. It could affect the structure. It wasn't a total lie. There was a leak, but it wasn't in the roof. Okay, Mom. I'll be there around 7. Margaret hung up and looked at the calendar. 12 days until Amanda returned. 12 days to dismantle 10 years of lies, manipulation, and psychological abuse. But now she had something she hadn't had before: 3 children who were starting to see the truth. And the truth, as they say, always comes out. The 3rd day began with a literal explosion. Jacob had found the fireworks Margaret kept for the 4th of July and decided to light one inside the house at 5 a.m. Grandma, the house is on fire! Emma screamed in panic. Margaret ran with the fire extinguisher that, thank God, she always kept in the kitchen. The firework had scorched the dining room curtain and filled the whole place with smoke. Jacob was standing in the middle of the chaos, laughing. It's fun, like on YouTube. Fun you could have burned the house down, Jacob. So what? It's an ugly house anyway. He shrugged. Mom said that when you die, she's going to sell it and buy us a better one. There it was again. The pure venom of Amanda coming from the mouth of her 7-year-old grandson. But this time it didn't hurt Margaret. It gave her fuel. You know what, Jacob, you're right. It is an old house. Do you know why? Because in this house I raised your father by myself after your grandfather died. In this house I sewed school clothes until 3 a.m. to pay for his education. The boy stopped laughing, his eyes widening. In this ugly kitchen I prepared 1,000 lunches with love so your dad would never go to school on an empty stomach. Margaret's voice was steady, filled with a quiet dignity that made even Jason pay attention. And if your mother thinks she's going to get this house, she is very mistaken, because yesterday I changed my will. I'm leaving everything to a foundation for orphaned children. Children who would actually appreciate having a roof over their heads. You can't do that, Jason shouted, his face reddening. That house is our inheritance. Inheritance. You who never visit me, who despise me, who treat me like a servant want an inheritance. Your mother says it's your right." Margaret took out her phone and played the recording she had made the day before of their conversation at dinner. Their own voices filled the room. "Dad is boring. Uncle James is more fun. We're not going to be poor like Dad anymore." The three children stood petrified, hearing their own betrayal played back to them. "You recorded our conversation," Emma whispered, her face pale. "I recorded everything, my girl. Every word, every confession. Because when your mother comes back and tries to turn everything against me, I'm going to have proof." It was then that Jason exploded, and it wasn't pretty. "You're a meddling old hag. That's why Dad never visits you. That's why Mom hates you. You're a bitter woman who can't stand to see anyone happy." He started throwing things. The vase Margaret's mother had given her, the picture frames on the shelf, her retirement diploma. All while screaming obscenities that no 12-year-old boy should know. "I hate you. I hate you. I wish you were dead." Emma joined the chaos. She went to the kitchen and started throwing plates on the floor. "If you don't give us Wi-Fi right now, we're going to destroy your whole house." Jacob, not wanting to be left out, grabbed Margaret's photo albums and started tearing the pages. Photos of her wedding of David as a baby of her parents who were no longer alive. Pieces of her history flying through the air like macabre confetti. Margaret stood in the middle of the hurricane, calm, observing. The hidden camera that Carol had installed was recording everything. After 20 minutes of destruction, the three of them were exhausted, panting amidst the rubble of her living room. "Are you finished?" Margaret asked calmly. They looked at each other, confused by her lack of reaction. "Now you're going to clean everything up. Every broken piece, every torn photo. And while you do it, you're going to think about this. Your mother left you here because she doesn't love you. If she loved you, she wouldn't have gone to Miami with Uncle James. If she loved you, she wouldn't use you as weapons against your father. If she loved you, she wouldn't teach you to hate the only person who truly cares about you." "You don't care about us," Jason shouted, but there was less conviction in his voice. "Oh no." Margaret went to the drawer and pulled out 3 savings passbooks, one in each of their names. Jason $4,500, Emma $3,800, Jacob $2,500. Every month from my $1,500 pension, I save $100 for each of you. Since I can't see you, at least I can secure your future. But you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to the bank to close these accounts. I'm going to give that money to children who actually value the efforts of others." Jason grabbed his passbook with trembling hands. $4,500 for me." "It was for you," Margaret corrected him. "Not anymore." Emma was the first to break. "Grandma, we didn't know." "You didn't know, or you didn't want to know. It's easier to believe your mother's lies than to think for yourselves, isn't it?" At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Lauren, Carol's sister from Child Protective Services. "Good morning, Mrs. Reynolds. I'm here about a call we received regarding possible child neglect." The children turned white. They knew what was coming. "Please come in," Margaret said, leading her into the disaster zone that was her living room. "As you can see, the children have just had an episode." Lauren observed the destruction, took out her camera, and started taking pictures. "Did the children do this?" "Mom says it's their way of expressing themselves," Jacob murmured. "Your mother encourages you to destroy other people's property," Lauren asked, taking notes. "Mom says Grandma is old and it doesn't matter what she thinks," Emma replied. Lauren continued taking notes, her expression growing more concerned. "And where is your mother now?" "In Miami on a work trip," Jason answered automatically. "Work," Margaret said dryly, showing Lauren Amanda's Facebook page. A new photo had appeared, Amanda and James toasting on a yacht. "Lots of work." Lauren reviewed the photos, the conversations Margaret had printed out, the bank statements with the debts. Her expression grew increasingly serious. "Children, I need to speak with each of you separately." While Lauren interviewed the children, Margaret picked up the pieces of her broken photos. Each fragment was a memory, but they no longer hurt her. Now she understood that she wasn't losing the past. She was reclaiming the future. An hour later, Lauren emerged from the room where she had been speaking with Jason. "Mrs. Reynolds, these children are suffering from severe emotional neglect. The psychological manipulation is evident. The oldest is on the verge of depression. The girl has chronic anxiety. And the little one is acting out what he sees. What can I do? For now, document everything. When the father comes, I need to speak with him. And when the mother returns..." Lauren paused, her professional demeanor momentarily breaking. Well, I'm going to have to open a formal investigation. After Lauren left, Margaret found the 3 children sitting on the stairs. They no longer looked like the little tyrants who had arrived. They looked like what they really were: scared, abandoned children. "Are they going to take us away from our parents?" Jacob asked, his voice trembling. Margaret sat with them on the stairs, her heart aching for their pain. "No, my love. No one is going to separate you from your father. But things are going to change. It's going to hurt. Change always hurts, but sometimes it's necessary." "Grandma," Jason wouldn't look her in the eye. "About Uncle James. Dad is going to die of sadness if he finds out." "No, my boy. Your father is stronger than you think, and he deserves to know the truth. We all deserve the truth." That afternoon, while the children cleaned the mess they had made, this time without protest, Margaret heard Emma whisper to Jason, "What if Grandma is right? What if Mom really doesn't love us?" "Shut up," Jason replied, but his voice no longer had conviction. Mom has to love us. She's our mom." But even he was doubting now. The armor of lies was beginning to crack. That night, after a quiet dinner, Jacob approached Margaret with something in his hands. It was a torn photo that he had tried to tape back together, the photo of his father on his graduation day. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I tried to fix it." Margaret hugged him. For the first time since he arrived, her youngest grandson hugged her back. "We can fix a lot of things, Jacob, but first we have to accept that they're broken." And in a few hours, when David arrived, the real reconstruction would begin. Stone by stone, truth by truth, until nothing was left of Amanda's castle of lies. David's arrival at Margaret's house sent ripples through the fragile peace that had settled over the afternoon. He pulled into the driveway at 7:10 p.m., his work truck leaving muddy tire tracks on the concrete. Through the window, Margaret watched him exit the vehicle, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion, dark circles framing his eyes. This wasn't the confident boy she had raised. This was a man who had been hollowed out from the inside. The children tensed as the front door opened. They had spent the afternoon cleaning, repairing what could be fixed, and coming to terms with the destruction they had caused. Now faced with their father's unexpected presence, they exchanged nervous glances, uncertain where their loyalties should lie after decades of conditioning. "Dad," Jason's voice broke the silence, a mixture of surprise and apprehension. "What are you doing here?" David looked equally surprised to see his children gathered in Margaret's living room, the evidence of their earlier rampage still visible despite their efforts to clean up. "Your grandmother called about a roof leak. What happened here?" "We did," Emma answered before Margaret could speak, her voice small but steady. "We got mad and broke things, but we're fixing them now." David's gaze swept across the room, lingering on the taped-together photo frames and the water stain on the ceiling from Jacob's firework. His expression darkened as the reality of the situation sank in. "Mom, what's going on? Why are the kids acting like this?" Margaret took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "The roof can wait, David. We need to talk, privately." The air in Margaret's kitchen felt charged with electricity as she closed the door, leaving the children in the living room. David sat at the table, the same table where he'd done homework as a boy, where he'd celebrated birthdays and Christmas mornings. Now it would be the site of revelations that would shatter his world. "Mom, you're scaring me. Is this about the kids? Did Amanda say something to you?" Margaret placed her phone on the table between them. "This isn't about what Amanda said to me. It's about what she's been saying to others." For the next 20 minutes, David sat in stunned silence as Margaret showed him everything. The credit card statements in his name that he knew nothing about, the Facebook photos of Amanda with James, the WhatsApp messages planning their escape to Miami, the recordings of the children revealing Uncle James' regular visits to their home. With each new piece of evidence, David seemed to physically shrink, as if each revelation was a blow to his body. 10 years. He finally whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. 10 years of marriage, and I never saw it. How could I be so blind? Margaret reached across the table, placing her hand over his. Because she made sure you couldn't see. She kept you working exhausting hours. She isolated you from friends and family. She controlled the narrative about everything in your life. That's what manipulators do. They create a reality where their victims can't trust their own perceptions. David's face crumpled, decades of suppressed emotions breaking through the carefully constructed dam of his composure. His shoulders began to shake with silent sobs. "I let her turn me against you. My own mother. The one person who was always there for me. You were manipulated, David. We all were. The kitchen door creaked open. Jason stood in the doorway, his expression a mixture of defiance and fear. Behind him, Emma and Jacob peered around his shoulders, forming a small, anxious cluster. Is Dad crying because of what we told you? Jason's voice wavered, years of conditioned loyalty to his mother battling with the emerging truth. Margaret opened her mouth to respond, but David raised his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. No, son, I'm crying because for years I've been asleep, and now I'm finally waking up. Jason took a tentative step forward, then another. Dad, we didn't want to tell. Mom said you would die of sadness if you knew about Uncle James. The color drained from David's face. You knew, all of you. Emma stepped around her brother. He comes when you're at work. Mom says he's her special friend, but we're not supposed to tell anyone, especially not you or Grandma. He sleeps in your bed, Jacob added, his childish directness cutting through any remaining ambiguity. And they make the door lock. David sat frozen, processing this final confirmation from the mouths of his children. Then, with a sudden movement, he opened his arms wide. Come here, all of you. The children hesitated for only a moment before rushing into their father's embrace. Years of emotional distance dissolved as David held his children, really held them perhaps for the first time. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. I should have seen what was happening. Margaret watched from the sidelines, her heart both breaking and healing at the scene before her. For all the pain of this moment, it was also the beginning of something true. A family finding its way back to each other through the wreckage of deception. Later that night, after the children had been tucked into bed, David and Margaret sat in the living room planning their next steps. David had called his boss and taken 2 weeks of accumulated vacation time, the first real break he'd had in years. We need documentation of everything, Margaret explained, laying out the advice Lauren from Child Protective Services had given her. Financial records, the children's testimonies, evidence of emotional abuse. Amanda will fight dirty when she realizes she's losing control. David nodded, his initial shock hardening into determination. I'll call the bank first thing tomorrow. And I need a lawyer. A good one. Carol's ex-husband used an attorney named Martinez for their divorce. He specializes in cases involving parental alienation. As they strategized into the night, a new dynamic began to form between mother and son. A partnership of equals rather than the strained, distant relationship Amanda had engineered over the years. The next morning brought a new challenge. The children woke to find their father at the breakfast table, a sight so unusual that they stopped in their tracks, unsure how to process this disruption to their normal routine. Dad's staying with us for a while, Margaret announced as she flipped pancakes on the griddle. We're going to have what I call a family reset. Jason's brow furrowed. What about Mom? Does she know you're here, Dad? Your mother is still in Miami, David replied carefully. When she gets back, we'll all need to have a very important conversation. But until then, we're going to work on becoming a real family again. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. Years of emotional neglect and manipulation couldn't be undone in a day, but small changes began to take root. Margaret instituted what she called Project Respect, a structured routine of responsibilities, consequences, and most importantly, genuine connection. Mornings began with breakfast together at the table. No phones, no distractions. David, initially awkward in this role, gradually found his footing as a present father rather than the distant provider he had been molded into. He taught Jason how to change the oil in the car, helped Emma with her math homework, played catch with Jacob in the backyard. Carol came by regularly, bringing not only emotional support, but practical help. Her sister Lauren arranged for the children to meet with Dr. Wallace, a child psychologist who specialized in cases of emotional neglect and parental alienation. These children have been weaponized, Dr. Wallace explained after her third session with them. They've been taught to reject authority figures other than their mother, yet paradoxically, she herself is emotionally absent. They're exhibiting classic symptoms of attachment disorder combined with anxiety. Jason, in particular, has taken on a parentified role, feeling responsible for his siblings' welfare because neither parent was emotionally available. Can they recover? David asked, the weight of his failures as a father evident in his voice. With time, consistency, and lots of love. Yes, Dr. Wallace assured him. Children are remarkably resilient, but it won't be quick and it won't be easy. You're essentially reprogramming their understanding of what family means. On the 5th day of their family reset, Margaret was teaching Emma how to make pecan cookies, the ones she'd loved as a small child before Amanda had cut off their relationship. As they kneaded the dough together, Emma's small hands mimicking Margaret's movements, the girl looked up with eyes too serious for a 10-year-old. "Grandma, why does Mom hate you so much?" Margaret measured her words carefully. "Your mother doesn't hate me, Emma. She fears me." "Fears you? Why would she fear you?" "Because I represent everything she's not. I worked my whole life, built something with my hands, raised a son with values. Your mother wants everything easy fast, without effort. When someone like me exists in her life, it reminds her that she chose the wrong path." Emma considered this as she shaped cookie dough into small balls. "Is Mom a bad person?" Margaret paused, flour dusting her hands like winter snow. "Your mom is lost. She's made wrong decisions, and now she's so deep in her lies that she doesn't know how to find her way out. But that doesn't justify the harm she's done to you and your brothers." On the 7th day, Jason approached Margaret while she was mending Jacob's torn shirt, a skill from her early days of single motherhood when new clothes weren't in the budget. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" His voice had lost some of its hostile edge over the past week, though wariness still lurked beneath his words. "Of course, my boy." "Why did you never defend yourself all these years when Mom spoke badly about you? Why did you never say anything?" Margaret's needle paused mid-stitch. "Because I thought keeping the peace was more important than being right. It was a mistake. Sometimes silence isn't peace. It's complicity with abuse." "Do you regret it not acting sooner?" Margaret tied off her thread before answering. "I regret every day that I watched your mother poison your father's mind against me and didn't fight harder. I regret every birthday and holiday I missed because I accepted her excuses. But most of all, I regret not seeing what she was doing to you children sooner." She set the mended shirt aside. "But I don't regret acting now. It's never too late to stand up for what's right, Jason. Remember that." On the 8th day, something extraordinary happened. Jacob, the youngest, the one most shielded from Amanda's direct manipulation due to his age, brought Margaret a drawing. It showed their family, David, the 3 children, and Margaret in the center. Amanda was notably absent. "And your mom?" Margaret asked gently, studying the crayon figures holding hands in front of a house with a disproportionately large chimney. "Mom is on a trip," Jacob replied matter-of-factly. "She's always on a trip, but you're always here." That night, Margaret and David had a conversation they should have had years ago. "Mom, I'm so sorry." David's voice broke as they sat on the porch swing after the children were in bed. "I failed you as a son." "No, David, I failed you as a mother. I should have taught you to recognize the signs. I should have protected you better. How did I not see what was happening? The credit cards, the affair, the way she treated the kids, the way she treated you. It was all right in front of me." "Because love blinds us," Margaret replied, watching fireflies blink in the gathering dusk. "And because manipulators are experts at making us doubt our own perception. They create a fog so thick you can't see what's right in front of your face." "What am I going to do when she comes back?" Margaret squeezed her son's hand. "You're going to be the father and husband you were meant to be. Strong, present, clear-eyed. And you're not going to face her alone." On the 9th day, the children did something that left Margaret speechless. They organized a dinner for their father and grandmother. They cooked with supervision, set the table, and even made a centerpiece with flowers from the garden. "It's to say thank you," Jason explained with no trace of the hostile boy who had arrived a week ago. "Thank you for not giving up on us." During dinner, David checked his phone and his expression darkened. "Amanda sent me a message. She says she'll be here in 5 days and hopes the kids are ready." "Ready for what?" Emma asked, apprehension creeping into her voice. David looked at Margaret, silently asking for guidance. It was time to tell them. "Kids, when your mother comes back, things are going to change a lot." David began, choosing his words carefully. "I'm going to file for divorce." Margaret expected tears, protest drama. Instead, Jacob asked, "Are we still going to be able to come to Grandma's?" "You're going to live with me," David assured him. "And you'll see your grandmother every day if you want." "And Mom?" Jason tried to sound indifferent, but Margaret saw the pain in his eyes. "Your mom will have to make decisions," David replied honestly. "But no matter what happens, you are going to be okay. I promise you." That night, as Margaret tucked Jacob in, he confided, "Grandma, you know what? I don't miss the iPad anymore." It was a small miracle, but big changes always start with small miracles. On the 10th day, a revelation changed everything. Emma came to Margaret's room at 6:00 a.m., her eyes red from lack of sleep. "Grandma, I need to tell you something. Something I haven't even told Dad." Margaret sat up in bed, instantly alert despite the early hour. "What's wrong, my girl?" "Mom has another phone, one that Dad doesn't know about. She hides it in her makeup bag." Emma's voice trembled as she spoke. "One day I saw it by accident and she broke off, swallowing hard. "And what did you see?" "Photos. Lots of photos of her with Uncle James, but also there were documents. Papers from a bank in Miami and something about a house she bought there." Margaret's heart skipped a beat. "A house in Miami?" Emma nodded. "And there was more. An email from a lawyer about custody. Mom wants to take us to live in Miami with Uncle James. It said something about how the U.S. doesn't have an extradition treaty for civil cases or something like that." Amanda wasn't just planning to leave David. She was planning to steal the children and disappear. "Is there anything else I should know?" Emma hesitated, then pulled something from her pajama pocket. It was a USB drive. "I copied everything. I don't know why I did it. Maybe because deep down I knew that someday someone would need to see it." Margaret hugged her granddaughter tightly. This 10-year-old girl had had to carry this burden alone, being braver than many adults. When Margaret plugged the USB into her computer, what they found was devastating. Not only was there evidence of the house in Miami purchased in James's name with money Amanda had been siphoning from their joint accounts for 2 years, but also a detailed plan. Phase 1 convinced Dee that I need a training trip to Miami. Phase 2, during my absence, Jay will empty the house of anything valuable. Phase 3, upon my return, I will provoke a fight with the old woman. I'll make it look like she mistreated the children. Phase 4, I'll use that to justify leaving with the children for their safety. Phase 5, once in Miami, no turning back. But the worst was in an audio file. It was Amanda talking to someone on the phone. "I don't care if the brats cry for their dad. They'll forget in 2 months. Besides, David is so pathetic he won't even fight. And if he does, I have edited videos that make it look like he hits Jason. Technology works miracles, my friend." Emma was crying silently as they listened. "Was Mom going to say that Dad hit us?" "Your mom was willing to do anything to get her way," Margaret said gently. "But has your dad ever laid a hand on you, ever?" "Never," Emma whispered. "Never. That's why I've been recording everything since you arrived, to protect you and your dad." Just then, Jason walked into the room. "What are you guys talking about?" Emma told him everything. Margaret watched the fury grow in her eldest grandson's eyes. "I'm going to kill her. I'm going to—" "No, Jason," Margaret interrupted firmly. "You're not going to do anything violent. That's exactly what she wants. A bad reaction she can use against you. We're going to be smarter than her." "How?" "With the truth and with the law on our side." Margaret immediately called the lawyer she had contacted earlier in the week. When she explained the new developments, he told her to come immediately with David. While they waited for David, who had gone to run errands, Jacob joined them in the living room. "Why is everyone sad?" "We're not sad, my love," Margaret assured him. "We're preparing." "For what?" "To protect our family." Jacob thought for a moment. Then he said something that broke Margaret's heart. "Grandma, I know Mom doesn't love me. Once I heard her tell Uncle James that I was a mistake, that if it weren't for me, she would already be free." 7 years old. Her 7-year-old grandson had heard his own mother call him a mistake. "Jacob, look at me," Margaret said, kneeling to his level. "You are not a mistake. You are a gift, and if your mother can't see that it's her loss, not yours." "Then why did she have me?" It was Jason who answered before Margaret could form a response. "To trap Dad. Mom got pregnant with you right when Dad had asked for a divorce the first time. Dad wanted a divorce before—" Emma's eyes widened in surprise. 3 years ago. I heard them fighting. Dad had found out that Mom had spent Grandpa Richard's insurance money on a trip with her friends, but then Mom told him she was pregnant with Jacob, and Dad stayed." Margaret started connecting dots. Richard's life insurance. She never knew exactly how much it was, but David had told her he was going to save it for the children's education. Now she understood where it had gone. David arrived with a distraught look on his face. "Mom, I went to the bank. Amanda emptied our savings account yesterday. $38,000. Everything we had saved in 10 years. Sit down, son. There's more you need to know. Margaret showed him everything. The documents, the audio files, the plan. With each piece of evidence, David seemed to age years, the weight of Amanda's betrayal crushing him. How could I have been so blind? Dad. Jason sat next to him, his adolescent awkwardness momentarily forgotten in the face of his father's pain. It's not your fault. Mom is a very good liar. She fooled all of us. But I'm your father. I should have protected you. You're protecting us now, Emma reminded him. That's what matters. The lawyer arrived at noon. Mr. Martinez, a man in his 60s, with the face of a bulldog but kind eyes. With all this evidence, we can not only prevent her from taking the children, but also request a restraining order, Martinez explained after reviewing everything. Attempted parental kidnapping is a serious crime, plus the financial fraud. We're talking about jail time. I don't want her to go to jail, David said immediately. I just want my kids to be safe. Dad, she was going to accuse you of hitting us, Jason reminded him. She was going to destroy you. Still, I don't want her children to see their mother in prison. Martinez nodded. I understand, we can negotiate. She gives up custody, returns the money, and there are no criminal charges. But we need to act fast. The moment she suspects something, she might accelerate her plan. She arrives in 4 days, Margaret said. Perfect. Enough time to prepare everything. After the lawyer left, they all sat in the living room, Margaret's little living room that had seen so much history. Kids, David began, his voice stronger than Margaret had heard it in years. I want you to know that no matter what happens with your mom, I will always be here. And so will your grandmother. Is Mom going to go to jail? Jacob asked, his 7-year-old mind struggling to process the adult complexities unfolding around him. We don't know, David answered honestly, but she's going to have to face the consequences of her actions. Are we going to see her again? Emma tried to sound indifferent, but Margaret heard the tremor in her voice. After all, it was still her mother. That will depend on her and on what the judge decides is best for you. That night, as they ate the chili Margaret had made with Emma's help, Jason said something that filled Margaret with pride. Grandma, thank you for not giving up, for fighting for us when we weren't even fighting for ourselves. I will always fight for you. Always. You know, Emma added, pushing her chili around with her spoon, these have been the best days of my life. For the first time, I feel like I'm in a real family. Me too, Jacob chimed in with a mouthful of food. And Grandma's food isn't horrible. It's the best in the world. They laughed. For the first time in years, they laughed together as a family. But while the children watched a movie in the living room, David and Margaret had a more serious conversation in the kitchen. Mom, I'm scared, David admitted, his voice low so the children wouldn't hear. What if Amanda becomes violent? What if she tries to take the kids by force? That's why we have the plan. The day she arrives, the children will be at Carol's house. The police will be alerted. The lawyer will be present. She won't be alone with them for a single minute. And what if the kids miss her later? What if they hate me for separating them from their mother? Margaret placed a weathered hand on her son's arm. The children will miss the mother they never had, not the one they do have. And with therapy and love, they will heal. We will all heal. She looked through the doorway at her grandchildren on the sofa, cuddled together watching the movie. In 10 days, they had changed so much. They were no longer the broken, angry children who had arrived. They were just children. Children who needed love, boundaries, and the chance to be kids again. There were 3 days left until Amanda's return. 3 days to finish legally protecting these children. Because what Amanda didn't know was that while she was enjoying herself in Miami, an army had risen here. An army of love, truth, and justice. And they were ready for the battle ahead. The 11th day dawned rainy. While Margaret was making breakfast, she found Jason in the living room looking at a photo album she had rescued from the destruction of the first day. That's Dad. He pointed to a photo where David was his age, awkwardly posed in a graduation gown from 8th grade. Yes, he had just won the state math competition. Look at the pride on his face. He looks like me, Margaret smiled gently. No, my boy, you look like him. And not just physically. You have his intelligence, his nobility. You had just buried it under pain. Jason turned the page. There was Margaret, 35 years younger, with her first group of students. You looked happy, Grandma. I was happy. Teaching was my passion. Like cooking, like loving you all. Why did you let Mom push you away from us? Margaret sat next to her grandson, the weight of regret heavy in her chest. Out of cowardice. I thought that if I didn't make waves one day, she would change. But abusers don't change with submission. They get stronger. Jason's voice dropped to a whisper. Grandma, do you think I'm like Mom? Sometimes I feel so much rage inside. Rage doesn't make you bad, Jason, Margaret assured him, seeing the fear in his eyes. What you do with it is what defines who you are. Your mother uses her rage to harm. You can use it to protect, to build, to change what is wrong. That morning they did something special. Margaret taught them how to make her mother's chili. 32 ingredients, 4 hours of preparation, a ritual she had waited years to share with her grandchildren. Why is it so complicated? Emma asked as they ground spices with a mortar and pestle. The best things in life require time, patience, and love, Margaret replied. There are no shortcuts for what is truly worthwhile. Jacob was in charge of toasting the spices, his face scrunched in concentration. It smells like Christmas, he declared. It smells like tradition, Margaret corrected him. Like history. My great-grandmother, your great-great-grandmother made this chili. She survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and now it lives on in us. We are history. Jacob seemed amazed by the idea. We are living history, my love. Each of us carries the stories of those who came before. While they cooked, David worked at the dining room table with the lawyer, signing documents, preparing the legal strategy. From time to time, he would look at them with a sad smile. Dad seems different, Emma observed. Your dad is waking up from a very long dream, Margaret explained. It hurts to wake up, but it's necessary. That afternoon, Dr. Wallace came for a special family session. I want each of you to write a letter to Amanda, she instructed. Not to send it, but to get out what you're carrying inside. Jason wrote 3 pages of fury. Emma, 1 page of questions. Jacob drew his mother as a monster with suitcases instead of hands. David wrote only 1 line. I forgive you, but I will not allow you to cause any more harm. Margaret wrote, I failed as a mother-in-law by not stopping you sooner. I will not fail as a grandmother. Now, the doctor said, I want you to burn them. Let go of the pain. In the backyard, under the light rain, they burned the letters in a clay pot. As the paper turned to ash, Jacob asked, Are we free now? Now we begin to be free, the doctor replied. The 12th day was for practical preparation. Carol came with her sister Lauren from CPS. The day Amanda arrives, the children will be at my house, Carol explained. It's better they don't witness the initial confrontation. But I want to see Mom's face when she realizes we know everything. Jason protested, the embers of anger still burning despite the progress he'd made. No, my love, Margaret intervened. Revenge is not our goal. Protection is. Lauren reviewed all the documents they had gathered. With this, we can request emergency custody for David. Amanda won't be able to get near the children without judicial supervision. What if she comes with that James guy? David asked, voicing the fear that had been troubling him. We'll have a patrol car nearby, Lauren assured him. Any sign of violence and they'll intervene. That night, while the children were sleeping, Margaret found David in the garden looking at the stars. What are you thinking about, son? About Dad? Do you think he would be disappointed in me? Margaret gazed up at the night sky stars, partially obscured by passing clouds. Your father would be proud that you are finally doing the right thing. It took you a long time, but you got there. That's what counts. Mom, how did you manage to raise a son alone? How did you find the strength? I didn't find it. I built it day by day, decision by decision, just like you are building it now. On the 13th day, the last day before Amanda's return, they decided to do something special. A real family day. They went to the park where Margaret used to take David when he was a boy. The children ran, played, got dirty. For the first time in years, Margaret saw them just being kids, unburdened by adult manipulations and expectations. Grandma, look on. Jacob had climbed the tallest tree in the playground. I can see the whole city. Be careful, she called up, maternal instinct kicking in. But David stopped her. Let him, Mom. He needs to feel brave. Emma and Margaret sat on a bench eating corn on the cob, watching the boys. Grandma, when Mom comes back, is all of this going to end? No, my girl. This is just beginning. What's going to end is the fear, the manipulation, the lies. What if Mom cries? Whenever she cries, Dad forgives her for everything. Margaret squeezed her granddaughter's hand. Not this time. This time your dad has something stronger than your mom's manipulation. What man? The truth, and you all to protect. Jason approached them with cotton candy for everyone. I spent my allowance, but it was worth it. That's my grandson, Margaret smiled, learning that giving is worth more than receiving. At sunset, they returned home. The children were exhausted, but happy. While Margaret was making dinner, she overheard them talking in the living room. Do you remember when Mom used to bring us here? Jacob asked, licking the last of the cotton candy from his fingers. Mom never brought us here, Jason replied, his voice gentle rather than correcting. Mom never took us anywhere that wasn't the mall. But Grandma did, Emma added. In just 13 days, Grandma has given us more than Mom has in years. Margaret's heart swelled with love and sadness at the same time. During dinner, David made an announcement that brought everything into sharp focus. Tomorrow is going to be a difficult day, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, we are a family, and real families protect each other. Is Mom not family? Jacob asked, confusion clouding his features. David considered his answer carefully. Mom is your biological mother, but family is who is here when things get tough. Family is who loves you unconditionally. Then Grandma is more family than Mom, Jacob concluded with the simple logic of children. That night, as Margaret tucked them in, each one said something she would cherish in her heart forever. Jason, Grandma, thank you for not giving up on me even though I was horrible to you. Emma, Grandma, I want to be like you when I grow up. Strong and brave. Jacob, Grandma, can I call you Mama Margaret? I already have a mom, but I need a real mom. Margaret couldn't hold back the tears. You can call me whatever you want, my loves. I will always be your grandma who loves you. David and Margaret stayed in the kitchen late going over the plan for the next day. At 10 in the morning, I take the kids to Carol's house. At 11, the lawyer comes. At 11:30, the patrol car will be on the corner. Amanda said she arrives at noon. And we will be ready, Margaret finished for him, her resolve hardening into steel. Before sleeping, Margaret looked at the photos of these 13 days she had taken with her old phone. The transformation was impressive. From 3 broken and hostile children to 3 children healing, laughing, being a family. Tomorrow, Amanda would return, expecting to find her submissive mother-in-law and her emotionally abandoned children. Instead, she would find the consequences of her actions. She would find that true love is always stronger than manipulation. She would find that the family she had despised had become an impenetrable wall protecting the children she had used as weapons. And Margaret, the old retired teacher, was ready to teach the final lesson, the most important one, the definitive one. It was the lesson she wished someone had taught her years ago. It's never too late to reclaim your power. It's never too late to rewrite the story of your life. The morning of Amanda's return dawned with an eerie calm. No birds sang outside Margaret's window, as if nature itself was holding its breath in anticipation of the storm to come. The sky hung heavy with gray clouds threatening rain that never quite fell. At precisely 11:58 in the morning, Margaret sat in her living room, back straight, hands folded in her lap. The documents were arranged on the coffee table in meticulous order. Financial records, custody papers, evidence of emotional abuse, transcripts of the children's statements to Dr. Wallace. Each piece of paper represented a nail in the coffin of Amanda's deception. David sat beside her, no longer the beaten-down man who had stumbled into her house a week ago. He had shaved, gotten a haircut, and wore a crisp blue button-down shirt instead of his usual work clothes. The physical transformation mirrored the internal one. In his eyes burned a quiet determination that reminded Margaret of Richard. For the first time in years, she saw her late husband in her son's face. Mr. Martinez occupied the armchair across from them, his briefcase open on his lap as he reviewed their strategy one final time. The patrol car Lauren had arranged was parked discreetly at the corner of the street, close enough to respond quickly if needed, far enough away not to immediately alert Amanda. Margaret's phone chimed with a text from Carol. Kids are fine, playing board games. They don't suspect anything. David checked his watch. 5 minutes. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down on them like a physical force. In minutes, they would confront the woman who had systematically dismantled their family. There would be no turning back from this moment. Remember, Mr. Martinez cautioned, no matter what she says, no matter how she tries to manipulate the situation, stick to the facts. Don't let her provoke an emotional reaction. That's what she'll be looking for, a way to paint you as unstable or aggressive. At 12:03, the distinctive purr of Amanda's SUV engine broke the silence. Through the window, Margaret watched her daughter-in-law park in the driveway, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror before exiting the vehicle. Amanda looked tanned and rested, wearing a floral sundress that probably cost more than Margaret's monthly pension. She pulled a Louis Vuitton suitcase from the trunk and sauntered toward the house as if returning from a casual weekend getaway rather than 2 weeks of betrayal. The front door opened without a knock. Amanda swept in, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and the energy of someone who owned every room she entered. "Oh, it's so hot out there," she exclaimed, dropping her designer handbag on the entry table without acknowledging Margaret or David. "David, what are you doing here? You should be at work. Where are the kids? I hope you haven't spoiled them. Margaret, it's hard enough for me to—" She froze mid-sentence as she finally registered Mr. Martinez's presence. Her eyes darted between the 3 adults, calculating, reassessing. "Who is this?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Amanda," David's voice carried a firmness Margaret had never heard before. "We need to talk." Amanda's face underwent a subtle shift. The confident smile remained, but her eyes hardened. "Talk about what I'm tired from my trip. The kids and I are going home." "The kids aren't here," Margaret said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And they're not going anywhere with you." Amanda's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose in feigned surprise. Then she laughed. That sharp, dismissive laugh Margaret had come to despise. "Excuse me, David, what does this mean?" Mr. Martinez cleared his throat. "Mrs. Reynolds, I'm Mr. Martinez. I represent Mr. Reynolds in the divorce and emergency custody proceedings he has initiated." "Divorce?" Amanda's laugh was higher now, tinged with nervousness. "David, honey, what did your mother do to you now? You know she's old and makes things up." "No, Amanda." David picked up his phone and pressed play. Amanda's own voice filled the room. "The brats get in my way. As soon as I can, I'll get rid of them. David is such an idiot. He won't even notice." The color drained from Amanda's face. That's edited. It's illegal to record someone without their consent." "It's also illegal," Mr. Martinez interjected, "to open credit cards in your husband's name without his knowledge. $30,000 in debt, ma'am." "I don't know what you're talking about." Amanda's voice had lost its melodious quality, becoming brittle. David placed the bank statements on the table, spreading them out like playing cards. 3 cards, Amanda, all documented. We also have evidence of the house in Miami, the one you bought with James using money you stole from our savings account. I didn't steal anything. It's joint money, which you emptied without your husband's consent to buy a property in your lover's name, Mr. Martinez clarified. That's marital fraud. Amanda turned to Margaret, her face contorting with rage. This is all your fault, you meddling old woman. You always wanted to separate me from David." "No, Amanda. You separated yourself," Margaret replied calmly. "I just documented your crimes." "Crimes, please." Amanda's laugh was verging on hysterical now. "What are you going to do, sue me for being unhappy in my marriage?" "No." Martinez pulled out another document from his briefcase. "For attempted international parental kidnapping, we have your complete plan to take the children to Miami without paternal consent." Amanda staggered backward, grabbing the back of the sofa for support. "The children are mine. I gave birth to them." "Children are not property," Margaret said, rising to her feet. "And after 13 days with me, they made a decision." "What did you do to them?" Amanda's voice rose to a shriek. "Did you brainwash them? This is parental alienation." David laughed bitterly. "Parental alienation? Seriously, the woman who told our children their grandmother was a dirty, poor old woman is talking about alienation. I want to see my children now." "No?" David's voice was pure steel. "First, we're going to establish the rules." Martinez opened his briefcase again. "Ma'am, you have 2 options. First, you accept the divorce, waive custody, return the stolen money, and leave without making a scene. In return, we don't press criminal charges. And the second, we fight in court. With the evidence we have, you will not only lose the children, but you will also face charges for fraud, attempted kidnapping, and psychological abuse. 3 to 5 years in prison." Amanda collapsed onto the sofa, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. For the first time since Margaret had known her, she saw Amanda without a mask. What she saw was pathetic, an empty woman who had built her life on lies. "You can't do this to me. I have rights." The children also have rights, Margaret reminded her. The right not to be manipulated, used, and emotionally abandoned. I never abandoned them. Oh no! Margaret pulled up her phone calendar. How many trips have you taken this year, Amanda 18? We have it documented. 18 times you left your children to be with James. That's a lie? Margaret pulled up the Facebook photos. Amanda and James in Cancun and Puerto Vallarta in New York. The children know everything, Amanda. They know about Uncle James. They know he sleeps in their father's bed when he's not there. They know you call them brats. They know you were planning to take them to Miami. I want to talk to them. Not until you sign the papers, David insisted. Amanda took out her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed. I'm going to call James. He's a lawyer. He'll defend me. Go ahead, Martinez said with professional calm. But I should inform you that James has already been notified that he is implicated in a fraud case. I doubt he wants to dig himself in deeper. She dialed once, twice, 3 times. No answer. He abandoned me, she whispered, the realization dawning on her face. The bastard abandoned me. Like you abandoned your family, Margaret said quietly. Amanda jumped to her feet, desperation giving way to fury. This isn't over. I will get my children back. I will, Mom! Everyone turned toward the voice. Emma stood in the doorway, her small frame rigid with tension. She had clearly snuck away from Carol's house. My love. Amanda's face and voice transformed instantly into the perfect mother. She ran toward Emma, arms outstretched. Emma stepped back, holding up her hands. Don't touch me. Emma, my baby, Amanda crooned, ignoring her daughter's rejection. What did they do to you? What did this old woman tell you? Grandma didn't tell me anything? Emma's voice was steady, though her hands trembled at her sides. You said it all. In your messages with Uncle James, in your lies, and every time you left us. I was working to give you a better life. No, you were traveling with your lover while we thought we were orphans with living parents. Jason and Jacob appeared behind their sister. Carol came running after them, apology written across her face. I'm sorry, Margaret. They snuck out when I wasn't looking. It's okay, Margaret reassured her. Maybe they needed to do this. Amanda tried to approach Jason next, her voice honeyed. Son, my love, your sister is confused. You understand, don't you? Mommy needed some time for herself. No, Mom? Jason's voice cracked, but his gaze remained steady. You're the one who's confused if you think we're going back with you. I am your mother. A mother doesn't call her son a mistake. Jacob's small voice pierced the tension. I heard you. You told Uncle James that I was a mistake. Amanda turned pale. No, I didn't. You're making that up. A mother doesn't steal her children's college money. Jason added, his adolescent voice fluctuating between child and man. A mother doesn't use us as an excuse for her lies, Emma continued, stepping closer to her brothers. A mother protects us, all 3 said in unison as if they had rehearsed it. Like Grandma does. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, even Amanda's ragged breathing. You're going to pay for this, Helen, she finally hissed, using Margaret's first name for the first time. You don't know who you're messing with. I know exactly who I'm messing with. A narcissist who mistook kindness for weakness. But it's over, Amanda. Sign the papers and go. And if I don't, David stood up, then we'll see you in court. And believe me, with what we have, you won't just lose the children, you'll lose everything. Amanda looked at her children one last time. For a moment, Margaret thought she was going to cry. But narcissists don't cry for others, only for themselves. She grabbed the papers, signed them furiously, and threw them on the table. I hope you're happy. You've just taken a mother away from these children. No, Jacob replied with a maturity beyond his 7 years. We just gained a family. Amanda stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The engine of her SUV roared and faded away, taking 10 years of toxicity with it. The children ran to hug their father. The 4 of them cried, wrapped in a group embrace, while Margaret went to make chamomile tea for everyone. Is she gone for good? Emma asked, her voice muffled against her father's shirt. I don't know, David answered honestly. But if she comes back, it will be on our terms. And if she doesn't come back, Jacob's voice trembled. Margaret sat with them on the floor, something she hadn't done in years. If she doesn't come back, we will move on because you don't beg for love, my children. Love is given freely, or it isn't love. Jason looked at Margaret, his eyes still wet with tears. "Grandma, are you okay?" "I'm better than okay, my boy. For the first time in 10 years, this family is free." That night, as they ate the chili they had prepared days before, David raised his glass of iced tea. "To Mom, to the woman who saved us all." "To Grandma," the children shouted, lifting their glasses. But Margaret raised her glass for something else. "To the truth, because in the end, the truth always wins." And as she looked at her family, her real family gathered around her humble table, she knew that all the pain had been worth it. The teacher had taught her last and most important lesson: it's never too late to stand up for what you love. 3 weeks had passed since Amanda slammed the door. 3 weeks of peace that were shattered one Thursday afternoon when she showed up unannounced. This time she wasn't alone. Margaret was in the garden with the children, teaching them how to plant tomatoes. The sun was warm on their backs, the soil rich and dark beneath their fingers. When they heard voices at the entrance, Margaret felt her stomach drop. "I demand to see my children. I have a court order." David had gone to work. They were alone. But Margaret was no longer the same helpless woman from before. "Kids, go inside the house now." "But Grandma," Jason began. "Now." They obeyed. From the window, 3 scared little faces watched as Margaret approached the front gate. At the entrance stood Amanda, a man Margaret assumed was James, and a woman with a folder. "Mrs. Reynolds," the woman introduced herself. "I'm from Social Services. We received a report of child abuse and neglect against you." Of course, Amanda's counterattack. "Perfect," Margaret replied calmly. "Come in, check whatever you like." Amanda smiled maliciously. "I also reported that my husband is an alcoholic and violent and that you cover for him." James added, "We have witnesses who will confirm everything." "Witnesses, how much did you pay them?" The social worker, a young woman named Patricia, seemed uncomfortable with the tension. "Ma'am, I need to speak with the children alone." "Of course, but first can I show you something?" Margaret took out her phone and played a video. It was from day 3 when the children destroyed her living room. It clearly showed Margaret remaining calm while they acted violently. "This is what Amanda calls abuse, not responding to violence with violence." Patricia watched intently. "The children did that, ask them why." "That doesn't prove anything," Amanda shouted, her composure slipping. "This old woman has them threatened." At that moment, David arrived. He had left work early after Margaret texted him about the unexpected visitors. Behind him were Mr. Martinez and, to Margaret's surprise, Lauren from Child Protective Services. "Patricia," Lauren greeted her colleague. "What are you doing here?" "We received a report." "Yes, we were notified. That's why I came. This family has been under my supervision for 3 weeks. I have a complete file." Lauren pulled out a thick folder. Psychological evaluations of the children, therapy reports, evidence of emotional neglect by the mother, attempted international kidnapping. "That's false." Amanda was losing control, her carefully applied makeup cracking along with her facade. "We also have this." David took out his phone. "Recordings of Amanda admitting the reports are false." He pressed play. It was a conversation between Amanda and James from that very morning. Recorded because James, trying to save himself, had started recording everything. "It doesn't matter if it's true or not," Amanda's voice said. "I just need CPS to believe me to get the brats back. With them in my possession, David will give me whatever I want." James turned pale. "You told me you didn't know I was recording." "You imbecile!" Amanda slapped him across the face. Patricia, the social worker, was speechless. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is very serious. Filing false reports is a crime." "I want to talk to my children." "Talk to them," Margaret said. "But from here, kids, you can come out." The 3 of them came out holding hands. They stood 10 feet from their mother. "Tell this woman the truth," Amanda ordered. "Tell her how your grandmother abuses you." "Grandma taught us how to cook," Jacob said simply. "Grandma listens to us," Emma added. "Grandma loves us," Jason concluded. "You just use us." "She brainwashed you. It's parental alienation," Lauren intervened. "Mrs. Reynolds, in my 20 years of experience, I have never seen such a clear case of projection. You accuse others of exactly what you do." "I have something else to show," Margaret said. She went into the house and came out with a box. "These are all the cards, drawings, and letters the children have made for me over the years that you threw in the trash. I rescued them from the can when I came to visit. Look at the dates." Patricia reviewed the contents. There were dozens of discarded expressions of childhood love. "For my grandma that I can't see," she read from a letter from Emma from 2 years ago. "I miss you, but Mom says you're busy. There's also this." David pulled out an envelope. "The results from the private investigator I hired. Amanda has been living a double life, not just with James. She has profiles on 3 dating apps, all active." "What?" James exploded. "You told me I was the only one." "Shut up, you idiot." Amanda was cornered, her lies collapsing around her. Patricia closed her folder. "I've seen enough. Not only is there no evidence of abuse by Mrs. Margaret Reynolds or Mr. Reynolds, but there is clear evidence of manipulation and false reports by Mrs. Amanda Reynolds. Furthermore," Lauren added, "I am going to recommend that the mother's visits be supervised and that the children continue therapy." "You can't do this?" "Yes, we can," said Martinez. "And there's more. Mrs. Reynolds, you are being sued for fraud. The banks have already been notified of the fraudulent credit cards." Amanda looked at Margaret with a hatred that could melt steel. This is all your fault." "No, Amanda. I only brought to light what you did in the darkness." It was then that James spoke. "I'm leaving. Amanda, you lied. I'm not going down with you." "You can't leave me. You promised we would be together. You promised you were rich, that the house in Miami was yours." "It was all a lie." James left, leaving Amanda alone in the yard. For the first time, Margaret saw her as she truly was, an empty woman who had gambled everything on lies and lost. "You have 5 minutes to leave," David said, "or I'm calling the police." Amanda approached the children one last time. "Someday you will understand what you did to me, and you will regret it." "No," Jason replied with surprising maturity. "Someday maybe you will understand what you did to us, and I hope you regret it." Amanda left. This time she didn't slam the door. She left defeated, empty, alone. That night as they ate dinner, Emma asked, "Do you think Mom will ever change?" "I don't know, my love," David replied. "But that's not our problem anymore." "Do you hate her?" Jacob asked, looking at his father with those solemn brown eyes. Margaret watched David carefully weigh his response. "I don't hate her. I pity her. Imagine living your whole life without being able to truly love, without knowing real happiness. That is her prison one she built herself." 6 months later, it was Saturday morning, and Margaret's house was filled with laughter, not just from her grandchildren, but from 6 other children from the neighborhood. Margaret's living room, the same one that was once destroyed in a fit of rage, was now a small art workshop. The walls were decorated with paintings made by small hands, the shelves lined with clay figures and papier-mâché creations. "Grandma Margaret, look at my painting." A little 5-year-old girl showed her a watercolor, a smiling sun over a house. After the scandal with Amanda, the story had spread through the neighborhood. But instead of negative gossip, Margaret received support. And when she mentioned that she missed teaching, mothers started asking if she would give private art lessons. Now she had Margaret's Art House, classes in painting crafts and traditional cooking for children. She charged a fair price, $20 per class, but the real payment was seeing those happy little faces. "Mom!" David came in with coffee and cookies for everyone. He had changed so much. The exhausted and defeated man was gone. He had gained weight, and his eyes sparkled with renewed purpose. "How's the class going?" "Perfect, like everything lately." The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Amanda didn't fight anymore, especially after the bank sued her and she had to declare bankruptcy. The last they heard was through Emma, who saw on Facebook that Amanda was working as a caregiver for the elderly in another state. "The irony is delicious," Jason had commented when they found out. "Now she has to take care of old people for $20 an hour." "Don't make fun," Margaret had scolded him. "Honest work is dignified. Maybe it will help her find herself." The children had blossomed. Jason was on the honor roll. Emma had joined the volleyball team, and Jacob had discovered a natural talent for music. Margaret's old piano finally had someone to play it. "Grandma," Jacob approached Margaret during the class break. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, my love." "Do you ever miss the mom she was before what?" "Before she turned bad." Margaret led him to a bench in the garden away from the cheerful chaos of the art class. "Jacob, your mom didn't turn bad. She always had that seed inside her. What happens is that some people choose to water the wrong seeds. She chose to water greed, lies, selfishness. And what seeds do we have? You have the seeds of love, honesty, bravery. And every day you spend here with your dad with me, those seeds grow stronger. That afternoon, after all the children had gone home, Margaret's family stayed for the Saturday dinner that was now a tradition. David cooked. He had discovered he had a talent for it. The kids set the table, and Margaret enjoyed watching them, these 3 young lives blooming before her eyes. "I have some news," David announced during dessert. "I got promoted. Production manager. With the raise, I can pay off all the debts Amanda left in a year." "Dad, that's incredible," Emma shouted, jumping from her chair to hug him. "And there's more. I was thinking, Mom, what if we expand your little school? We could build a proper classroom in the backyard." "David, that's not necessary." "Yes, it is. You saved my life, Mom. Mine and my children's. It's the least I can do." Jason stood up. "I have something to say, too. I wrote an essay for the school's writing contest. It's about Grandma." He cleared his throat and read, "My hero doesn't wear a cape or fly. My hero is 67 years old, has wrinkled hands from working so hard, and the biggest heart in the world. My hero is my grandmother, who taught me that true love isn't bought with expensive gifts or lavish trips. It's built with patience, with boundaries, with presence. My grandmother saved me from becoming a monster. She taught me that family isn't just blood, it's a choice. And I choose my grandmother today and always." Margaret couldn't hold back the tears. Neither could David. Even Emma, who acted tough, cried. "I wrote something too," Emma said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. "But it's a poem. Once there was a girl so lost in a world of lies and frost. A grandma came with love so true and showed her a path fresh and new. Now the girl is lost no more, for she found love at her grandma's door." Jacob didn't want to be left out. "I didn't write anything, but I made you this." He pulled out a drawing. It was all of them in front of the house holding hands. Above it, he had written in his child's handwriting, "My real family." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, David and the kids stayed on weekends, Margaret went out to the garden. The full moon illuminated her tomato plants, which were already beginning to bear fruit. She thought of Richard, her husband. "I did it, my love. I raised our son, and now I'm raising our grandchildren. Not how we imagined, but I'm doing it." She thought of Amanda alone somewhere taking care of the elderly for pennies. "I hope you find peace," she whispered to the wind. "I hope one day you understand that love isn't manipulated, it's cultivated." And she thought of herself, the retired teacher who didn't do anything anymore. She smiled. She had never done so much. She had never been so useful. She had never been so happy. The following Monday, while preparing for the next art class, she received an unexpected call. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is the principal of Lincoln Elementary. We heard about your art school. We were wondering if you'd be interested in giving workshops here as well. Paid, of course." Life was giving her back everything she had sown with interest. But the best reward came a month later. It was Mother's Day. She didn't expect anything. She had never been celebrated much on that day. That morning, the children woke her up with breakfast in bed. "Happy Mother's Day, Mama Margaret," the 3 of them shouted. "But I'm your grandmother." "You're more than that," David said from the doorway. "You're the mother we all needed." They handed her an envelope. Inside were legal papers. "What is this? The children want you to be their legal guardian as well," David explained. "In case something happens to me, they want to make sure they stay with you, not with Amanda." "It was our idea," Jason clarified with pride. Margaret cried. She cried like she hadn't cried since Richard died. But these were tears of pure joy. As they all ate breakfast together on her bed, which nearly broke from the weight, Jacob asked, "Grandma, are you happy?" Margaret looked around. Her son recovered, her grandchildren healing, her house full of life and purpose. "I'm more than happy, my love. I am whole." And it was true. Because in the end, it wasn't Amanda who lost. It was them who won. They won freedom. They won peace. They won true love. The teacher had taught her final lesson, but the learning would continue forever. Because that's what family is, a classroom where we never stop learning how to love.